Okay, with a show of hands, how many people cannot dunk a basketball? Okay, there's always one or two show-offs in the room, okay? Here's a picture of Michael Jordan from 1988 slam dunk competition. Obviously dunking the ball. Okay, my name is Brett Hills, and for the next 34 minutes, I'm going to share success skills that help me play above the rim in commercial real estate and in life. And today's goal is that a couple of these skills resonate with you so that you can help reach your goals in commercial real estate and life. It is said that sports are a metaphor for life. So the format for today's presentation is we're going to imagine that we're in a basketball game. You guys are the players. This is the locker room. We just came in at halftime, and I'm going to be the coach. Okay, thank you. And I'm going to share success skills with you. Sound good? Yeah. I can't hear you. Sound good? Yeah. Woo! Okay. All right. Anytime you see a pie chart and a whiteboard, it's something important. Success, the three components to success are relationships, knowledge, and mindset. Relationships, mindset, and knowledge. Okay, we're going to start with knowledge. So one thing you can do is surround yourself with experts. Because you see, growing up, when we did our schooling, the curriculum was set for us. The books we read, the teachers we had. But isn't, like, once we finished our schooling, that's when the real learning in life began? So now, we need to take responsibility for our own education. And one of the ways to do that is to surround yourself with an expert, to think of it as like, I want this person to be my professor. I'm going to share a little story. Last month, I was at a fundraiser golf tournament, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw Coach Nick Nurse of my beloved Philadelphia 76ers. And I had to make a choice. Do I keep walking and imagine for the rest of my life what would that conversation have been like with Coach Nurse? Or do I go and talk to Coach Nurse? So I thought of the Wayne Gretzky quote, you miss 100% of the shots you do not take. So what do you think I did? Took the shot, exactly. So I went up and I talked to Coach Nurse. And it was a spirited conversation about the NBA Finals and how the NBA was changing. They were going to a 9-man bench and playing with more speed and more quickness, and the outlook for the Sixers for this upcoming season. It was invigorating. I loved it. But then I shifted the conversation, and I said, Coach Nurse, what books do you recommend? And he goes, well, I really like the Tony Dungy book and the Pete Carroll book, and of course, Phil Jackson's book, 11 Rings. Phil Jackson won 6 NBA titles as the coach with the Chicago Bulls, led by Michael Jordan, and 5 titles with the LA Lakers with Kobe Bryant. So this was a way for me to learn from Coach Nurse. Even though we had just met, I like surrounding myself with experts. I'm going to share with you some of the quotes from Phil Jackson's 11 Rings because they really resonated with me. Because think about it. Oh, excuse me. Coach Nurse said, but these are all books about coaching. And I thought, exactly. Aren't we coaching ourselves every single day? We get up in the morning and we look at the mirror and say, okay, what problems do I need to solve today? What deal do I need to move forward? What relationship do I need to mend? So we're coaching ourselves every day. And when we coach ourselves, we also become better at what we do. And then we coach those around us, our clients, our friends, our family. At the end of the conversation with Nick Nurse, he said to me, hey, make sure to say hello the next time you see me. How cool is that? I will, Coach Nurse. Okay, I want everyone to think for a second. How many pages per day do you need to read to finish 25 books in a year? Any guesses? 30, it's close. 45. It's 20 pages a day to read 25 books in a year. A Portuguese saying says, grain by grain, the hen fills her belly. So small steps lead to big results. 20 pages a day, 2 books a month, 25 books a year. That's 250 books in a decade. Think about how much you can learn. One of Phil Jackson's quote that resonated with me in his book, 11 Rings, if you live in the river, you should make friends with the crocodile. Yeah, I got a chuckle out of it too. So what does this mean? To me, the crocodile was like the challenges of your business, the challenges of commercial real estate. So how can you overcome those challenges? Well, gaining more knowledge, reading more books, surrounding yourself with experts. One of my dad's favorite quotes is, "Chance favors the prepared mind," by Louis Pasteur. If you want good luck, be prepared, because hard work begets luck. My dad told me this quote like 5 times a week for my entire life. So be prepared. Early in my career, another expert I surrounded myself with was Jeffrey Gitomer. And these 2 books, one on attitude and one on selling, became the foundation of why and how I became successful today. So I highly recommend these 2 books. And I went on to become friends with Jeffrey Gitomer. And we text and talk regularly. It's really cool. Failing to prepare is preparing to fail. And this quote goes through my head every day when I think about taking a shortcut, and I don't. Because I know I have to do the best for myself, so I can also do the best for my clients. Failing to prepare is preparing to fail. When I first got into this business, I thought it was all going to be about negotiating. And I'm going to negotiate that other guy to a pulp. It's such a small part of our business. But when it does come to negotiating, I'll share 2 things. One, be prepared. If your client is about to spend $10 million on a property, you better put in the time to justify that price so when you're negotiating it, your client feels comfortable that they're getting a good deal. And what I've learned, and please, this is important, is the best negotiations are when both sides win. I was recently in the car with one of the top executives from In-N-Out, and he said to me, "Brett, the best negotiations are when you leave a bite on the apple for the other guy." And I really like that analogy, and I use it often, and it's worked really well, especially at the end of negotiations. So thank you, Matt. Really appreciate that. Okay, so we've talked about knowledge, how you have to take responsibility for your education. You have to surround yourself with experts. You've got to pick your curriculum. Because it's cool, like in school think about it, we had homework, we had tests, and we had grades. We don't have that. We just have a mirror. So it's up to us to take responsibility for creating knowledge. This next section, we're going to talk about mindset. During COVID, I kept hearing this phrase, "This too shall pass." So I looked it up, and it comes from about 3,000 years ago. King Solomon asked a jeweler to make him a ring with magic powers. So what the jeweler did was he made a ring, and inside he inscribed Gam Zed Yavor, which in Hebrew translates to "this too shall pass." And when he gave the ring to King Solomon, he said, "King Solomon, I want you to understand that when bad things happen, remember, this too shall pass, and keep yourself in the middle." And then this is the part that I had never heard before. He also told King Solomon that when really good things happen, remember to stay centered, because this too shall pass. So young in my career, when like something good happened, I was like high-fiving and popping champagne bottles and woo, celebrating. I was getting really high. But when bad things happened, I was throwing chairs across the room and kicking things. But now it's, this too shall pass. So what did I do as a logical broker? I went to a jeweler and said, can you make me a magic bracelet? And inside I had them inscribed Gam Zed Yavor, and I wear it every day. And whenever something good or something bad happens, it keeps me centered, because this too shall pass. Jeffrey Gitomer, in talking about resilience, says it's not what happens to you, it's how you react, respond to, and recover from what happens to you. And resilience is such an important part in commercial real estate and life, because every day we're faced with challenges. Now, one of the ways that I've been able to keep my mind open and free of stress and clutter when it comes to finances, because we don't make a paycheck. And sometimes for me, I might not get a check for 6 or 8 months, but I need to still be able to pay my bills every month. So about 25 years ago, I started tracking every penny that came into my life and every penny that came out. And this gave me my own fiscal responsibility. I was able to budget correctly, and I wasn't worried about when the next commission check was going to come in. And it led me to this equation that I wish they taught in school but never have. If you spend less than you earn, you're going to generate wealth. If you spend less than you earn, you're going to generate wealth. And what this allows me to do is to have at least 6 months of reserves, so that instead of worrying about, well, is this deal going to close next week? Oh no. I'm just worried about problem solving, finding opportunities for my clients, helping my friends and helping my family in whatever problems they have, knowing that I don't have to worry about the next check coming in. All right, we're going to talk about attitude and enthusiasm. So I see attitude, if you think about a sailboat, attitude is like the sail. It helps you set your course and propel you to whatever direction you're going. One of my favorite attitude quotes is, the pleasure you get from your life is equal to the attitude you put into it. In my 20s, I didn't have balance. I just skied every day. But I put a lot of attitude into it. And this picture is an example of this run that's rarely open. It only opens when there's a lot of snow. And not many people ski it, because right next to me skiing this line is a 200-foot cliff. So literally, if you make a wrong turn, there's going to be dire consequences. But I study this line, I study the conditions, and I also studied, where do I want the photographer to be when I make that perfect turn right under that tree? And this picture went on to be published, and I'm proud of it just because I put a lot of attitude in making sure I was in the right spot, the camera person was in the right spot, and that I didn't ski off the cliff. So then in my 20s, I was like, what happens if I take this same attitude that I put towards skiing and put it towards problem solving and entrepreneurship? So I ask you, whatever you're most passionate about, are you putting that same energy into whatever your business endeavors are? Okay, then I looked up, I was curious, where does enthusiasm come from? That seems like an interesting word. Well, En means in, and Theos means God. So it literally means having a God within. So if attitude is the sail on your boat, I see enthusiasm as the wind coming into that sail. Attitude and enthusiasm play an important part in mindset when it comes to being successful in commercial real estate and in life. Okay, listen, I did not like change growing up. Kindergarten or first grade, no. Lower school to middle school to high school, I did not like any of it. But embracing change leads to growth. Embracing change leads to growth. And one of the things that helped me visualize and become more comfortable with embracing change was the idea of lobstering. Because you see, when a lobster gets to a certain size, it becomes too big for its shell. And it has to shed its shell. And it's vulnerable to injury and attack for those few days. But then it grows a bigger and stronger shell. So every time I'm faced with a challenge, I'm like, where's the opportunity to grow? So this last March, I got approached by the CEO of a senior care facility, and he wanted to open 4 locations in Albuquerque. So what did I do? I immediately gave myself a self-guided education on everything I could learn about senior care facilities, how much they cost, how much they charge, what locations they needed, so that I could then pitch myself to take advantage of this opportunity. So we started talking. He was interviewing me on the phone, and I felt like it was going pretty well, but I immediately made a shift in the conversation. I was like, how'd you get in? I started asking questions. How'd you get into the business? What do you like best about the business? Hey, where did you grow up? Turns out he grew up one town over from me outside of Philadelphia. So at the end of the conversation, I knew I only had to say 2 words to win the account. That's right. Go Birds. Okay, Phil Jackson in his book says growth is the key to sustained success. The guy won 11 rings as a coach. I believe him. Growth is the key to sustained success. Also in his book, he says, fall down 7 times, stand up 8. And this goes back to resilience, because in our line of work, in commercial real estate, we don't just fall down. We usually get kicked down. And it's like every day something bad happens. But you got to stand back up and have that resilience. So earlier I mentioned that I thought that commercial real estate was going to be all about negotiating. Really, what I've learned is this business is all about information and relationships. Information and relationships. So I'm going to share a story with you today, how getting information led to a tremendous opportunity for my career. Okay, so here's an aerial of Albuquerque, and I had a client ask me, where is the highest volume Chick-fil-A in Albuquerque? And I told him up here in the northwest quadrant in Cottonwood, it's the first Chick-fil-A that opened in 2008, and they're consistently doing around $8 million in volume. He said, great, Brett, can you verify that for me? I said, okay. So I started calling everyone I knew, and no one could give me an exact number on what their volume was. So what did I do? I had to roll up my sleeves, and I picked a time after they opened, but before the lunch rush, and I went in. And an employee greeted me and said, hey, can I help you with something? I was like, yeah, I'd like to talk to the manager. And they said, they just went to the bank. They'll be back a little later. And then he said, can I help you with something? I was like, I don't know, maybe. I heard this was the #1 volume Chick-fil-A in Albuquerque. And he said, we were until about a month ago, when the new location at Coors and St. Joseph surpassed us, because they have a double drive-through and we just have a single drive-through. I go, oh, interesting. And I was like, what are you guys doing, about 150,000 a week? He goes, actually a little north, 165,000 a week. I was like, okay, great. So I knew 165,000 times 52 was 8.5 million. So I called my client as I walked out the door, and I told him the information. He's like, great work, Brett. And I really solidified that account. Okay, that's the first thing I did. Next thing I did was I hit the gas and I drove to Coors and St. Joseph, where the highest volume Chick-fil-A is, which is right here. And sure enough, the drive-through stack was packed. And I saw that. But then I saw right next to it 29 acres of undisturbed dirt. And immediately what I saw was this: more pad sites, an anchor tenant. Because if that Chick-fil-A was doing the highest volume, there's going to be other uses that are going to want to be parasitic to that Chick-fil-A. So by getting that volume, it led me to one of the largest opportunities of my career. So I also encourage you to have fun, and that's what I did. Once I got the listing on this property, I went back to that dirt, and I told the developer, I was like, I'm going to bring you a Raising Cane's deal in the hard corner right next to that Chick-fil-A, because they like to go next to each other. So I was like, we're going to have a little fun with this. I got a chicken finger, and I went and I buried it in the dirt. And what happened? 2 years later, I got a Raising Cane's deal, and we set the market at one of the highest ground lease in Albuquerque. And so I encourage you also, have fun. Roll up your sleeves. Go that extra mile for your client, because information leads to opportunities. In basketball, there's a slang term called a bunny, which means an uncontested shot, usually a layup or a dunk, a shot that you should definitely make. See, making a shot like a logo three from midcourt, that's difficult. But we got to focus on making the bunnies. I did some research, and last year in the NBA, the average margin of victory in a game was 4.6 points. So that's like 2 or 3 shots. And every game that I watched, there was a handful of layups and dunks that were missed. So I encourage all of you, make the bunnies. What are some of the bunnies in commercial real estate? Okay, fundamentals. Return emails and voicemails promptly. I had a competitor, a broker from another brokerage, say to me, Brett, I really appreciate that I can count on you to return my emails promptly. That's my competitor saying that. Document everything. I got a call recently. Debbie's laughing because she was part of this. A developer said to me, I'm getting sued by a broker who thinks he's entitled to a fee from a deal that you were part of in 2013. That's 12 years ago. Within 5 minutes, I was able to produce the letters of intent, the lease drafts that said that he was not involved. And you need to be organized and you need to document everything. Another bunny, they used to say that you want to under promise and over deliver. I hate that saying. Just promise and deliver. Promise and deliver. It's really easy. It's how you'll create trust with your clients and all those around you. Another expert I surrounded myself with was the former governor of New Mexico, Gary Johnson. I immediately was interested in getting to know him because he did the Ironman in Hawaii and he summited Mount Everest. But he also was a really successful business person. And one of his fundamental principles is that something that will be revealed eventually should be revealed immediately. Unfortunately, in commercial real estate, we are in the bad news business. I mean, bad news happens more often than good news. And I highly recommend that you reveal it immediately. Okay. We've talked about knowledge. We've talked about mindset. And we're going to touch on relationships. Whenever I'm building a relationship, I try to be curious and ask questions. I listen more than I talk. It's been said we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so I try to listen twice as much as I talk. Albert Mehrabian did a study on nonverbal communication and found that 55% is through your body language. And body language is derived from your attitude. Can you feel the difference between those two? So I encourage you, when you're building relationships, to think about your nonverbal cues. And listen, a lot of our what we do is on the phone. And a trick I learned is to always be smiling while you're talking, because that comes through in the inflection in your voice. 90 years ago, Dale Carnegie wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People. And my favorite quote from that book is, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. Know, like, and trust. During COVID, I had to make a difficult decision. I was considering getting rid of the 20% of my clients that were causing 80% of my headaches. And I was nervous because I was going to be giving up income and maybe giving up potential referral business on the unknown income that was out there. But I decided to do it at a time when there wasn't much income coming in. And the results were exponential because all of a sudden I had all this free mind time to problem solve, think creatively, find new opportunities for my clients, for my friends, for my family. So know, like, and trust. All right, so I've given you a lot of information today, a lot of success skills that'll help you gain knowledge, help with your mindset, build relationships. Now, how to implement them, I'm going to go to my favorite Philadelphia athlete, Tyrese Maxey. Tyrese was drafted in 2020 by the Philadelphia 76ers. And immediately, I recognized he was electric. He wears the number 0 because he has zero fear when he's on the court. But what really connected me with Tyrese was his motto: I will get 1% better every single day. So with all of what I've shared with you, just think about, how can I get 1% better every day? And his foundation is helping communities in teaching children, the youth of today, a lot of what I've shared with you on how to be successful in life. If you can't dunk a basketball, you could still play above the rim. And for Tyrese Maxey in 2024, he is voted the NBA's most improved player and an all-star. At one point, the Philadelphia 76ers organization was considering changing the locks to their practice facility because he was working out too much. Can you say the same? So 1% better. 1% better. All right, we're in our last segment here. And we're going to talk about one of my favorite head coaches in basketball of all time, Jim Valvano. And this is relevant because in 1983, in our pit, Jim Valvano and his 1983 NC State Wolfpack won the NCAA championship. And to do so, his team had to win 9 consecutive elimination games in a row to win that championship. And here's what's amazing. 7 of those 9 games, they were losing with less than a minute to go. When he first took the head coach position at NC State, at the end of practice, he'd have his players get up on the ladder and actually practice cutting down the nets so that they could visualize what it would be to be a national champion. So what is your cutting down the nets moment? I didn't see this game in 1983, but it's been said that it's the greatest college basketball game of all time. And if you have an hour and 41 minutes, I highly recommend watching the 2013 documentary, Survive and Advance, which is the Jim Valvano story. But what I did watch was 10 years later, in 1993, I was just going through the channels and stumbled upon the ESPY Awards, where Jim Valvano was being awarded an ESPY. And he said, if you laugh, if you think, and if you cry, that's a heck of a day. You do that 7 days a week, and you're going to have something special. So let's think about that for a minute. You laugh. It's said that laughter is the shortest distance between two people. So in building relationships, think about how can you create laughter together, make connections. Go Birds. You think. Aristotle has said that contemplation is the highest form of brain activity. Contemplation is the highest form of brain activity. And then you cry. Then these could be tears of joy, tears of sadness. And what's so profound about this is that he died shortly after. So he never got to cry anymore. So I encourage all of you in this second half to elevate your relationships. Take responsibility for furthering your own education. Do the little things every day. Get 1% better. Make the bunnies. And in doing so, you'll be able to slam dunk the game of life. Now, on 3, I want to hear a let's go. 1, 2, 3. Let's go! Thank you. Thank you.